welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Annie. Because it's pie season right now, and I oftentimes hear a decent amount of stress around making your own pie crust, I thought I would show you what my version of making pie crust looks like and the reasons why I go about doing each one of these things. So I've made just a couple, one or two pies in my lifetime. And when I'm on the boat, or when I was on the boat for a huge number of years, I didn't have a Cuisinart or a food processor, so I didn't make it this way. You can do this by hand, but there is something lovely about what happens when you use the Cuisinart. So the process is 2 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. I almost always use King Arthur flour. You're welcome, King Arthur. A kind of generous pinch of table salt. Not kosher salt, because it'll end up having, the grains are too large and there's not enough time for it to dissolve. Then butter. Some people will use lard, and that's also a fabulous pie crust. Most often I have access to butter, so I use butter, but straight up butter, not butter and shortening. So, or Crisco as my grandma used to say, but that's the brand name. And it's not good for us. So, whereas, well, butter's not, it's still a fat, it's better for us. Same thing with lard. Okay, so now we're gonna make some noise. And I'm only gonna run this until, just that long, until it's like coarse grain or cornmeal, right? So it's a little loose. I mean, loose isn't the right word. It's a little, just tiny bit clumpy, I guess is the word. Not pea-sized, smaller than that. Okay, now it goes into a bowl. And the reason for this is you want to be able to control very specifically how much ice water you're putting in. Now again, I don't use vodka or vinegar in my pie crust. I find that just using really cold butter and really cold ice water is enough. So you can use your hand or you can use a spatula, and in this case, out of all the cases, I almost never use a tool when I can use my hand, but I find that this works just ever so slightly better. Now the interesting thing is with this method, you can add more water to this method than you can when your butter is a little coarser, I think is the best word. And the thing here is to just mix just enough water until it all wants to come together. Now there's a tiny bit of flour here in the corner. I'm gonna, right here, yep, that's perfect, Chloe. Right there, I'm gonna add a tiny bit of water just to that amount of flour. And that's it, done. So now I'm to the point where I wanna touch it. So I will. This is gonna make 2 pie crusts, or a crust for one pie that has a top and a bottom. One or the other. Now, comes together, you kind of pull, incorporate the little bits, and the idea here is that you would touch this as little as possible, but just as much as you need to, right? So that's done there. No more touching. And this we would split into 2, so I'm going to take my hand and just squeeze it. Now, this disc should go into the refrigerator or the freezer for a little bit. Form these 2 discs here so you can see, right? And then once they've chilled a little bit, you can come back and shape them. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so one of the discs is actually in the freezer right now. The other disc is not. So I want to show you what can happen if you don't allow the pie crust to rest for a second. This is one of the places, other than how to combine all of the ingredients well, this is one of the places that people get a little stuck. So, grandmother's rolling pin, I'm going to roll out. Now, because we've touched it enough, there is some gluten that's developed. And how I know that is I can see when I push it out, when I push the crust out, it wants to shrink back. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is a little bit the same thing that happens with pizza dough, where you push it out to the edges and it comes back, and you push it out and it comes back. So I could choose to fight with this, or I could say, even at this stage, you know what? I think I'll wait 5 minutes. I'm going to put this into the refrigerator on a plate or cookie sheet or something like that. 5 minutes later, I'm going to come back to it, and it's going to be so much easier. I'll show you. Okay, so that pie crust that I was rolling has been sitting in the refrigerator for 5 minutes or so, and which really in the whole scheme of making a pie is not that long, right? And it's so worth letting it rest for a second so that you can then roll it out. So this is so much more agreeable. It's like giving yourself a timeout and pausing when you're having a conversation with somebody and you need to give it a little bit of a rest. Come back, regroup, go away, regroup, come back, and have things be a little calmer. All right, now, pie pan. So, while I didn't say right then, you want your pie crust to be just ever so slightly larger than the pan itself. Now, what happens? What happens if it's split like that? What will we do? That's okay. We'll just press it back together. If it doesn't want to go back together, you can encourage it with a little water. Water can be like your glue. And then you kind of encourage and tuck and just see where things want to hang out, right? Okay, so that looks great. Now, what I typically do, this pie pan has a flute on it, so I could just cut the edge off, but I really like pie crust. So how I do this is I get the tips of my fingers a little floury, and I just take two little bird mouth, right? Little bird mouth, feed the little bird. This is how I taught the girls. Little bird mouth, feed the bird. Little bird mouth, feed the bird. And all the way around, right? And I kind of roll the crust. Maybe I should go this way so you guys can see it. It's not how I would typically do it, but and if it starts to stick, then just get your fingers a little more floury again. Tuck all the way around, right? And so there you go. Now you can take this crust and add any sort of savory and or sweet combination that you want. And so my purpose here is not to show you how to make a full pie, but just to really focus on pie crust itself, right? The part that makes people super nervous and is so simple. It's really simple. I know some of us have watched our grandmothers do it, like whip a pie together, and I did too, and it took me years to sort it out. But a number of the things that we talked about make it so much easier. Okay, until next time, happy pie making, and we'll see you shortly in another video. Until then, be safe, be well.